And we are back with another edition of the Boy Wonder Chronicles. By that, of course, I mean Tani's best tactics. And today, we're going to take a look at how he beat the same grandmaster twice in a row in ChessKid land. But before we get to these fun tactics, make sure you hit the subscribe button because it won't be the last time Tani beats some GMs. Okay, here we are. Tani is white. I'm not going to name the GM as black because he was nice enough to play in one of our events, but I will say that he is the #1 rated grandmaster from a very strong chess country. But we'll leave it at that. Okay, Tani being white has this extra pawn here on d3, but it's not the happiest little pawn in the world. It is isolated, it's already on in a half-open file, and black is already targeting it a couple of times. But Tani decides, hey, you know what? If it's not a fixed target, if it's a movable target, it's a little bit harder to win that pawn, so he pushes it. But wait a minute, isn't he moving the pawn into the lion's den? There are 2 attackers and only 1 defender? Well, Tani has seen a little bit more, because after this pawn is captured by the bishop, Tani says, wait a minute, this rook is overworked. This rook is trying to guard the bishop, which is in danger, and it's trying to guard this rook, which is in danger by the queen. Now, of course, the grandmaster playing black saw that, and he said, wait a minute, it's not just an overworked piece that's going on in this position, but if you ever have a piece that lands on top of my bishop, my queen will be eyeballing that piece. He's going to use some discovered attack, so it's about to get really crazy. So Tani takes, temporarily up a piece, but then black plays knight f3 check, which is not only a monster fork of the king and both of these rooks, but it's a discovered attack on this rook, which by the way was already attacked, and because the knight moves out of the way, it's a discovered attack on this rook. Go ahead, find me a rook on the chessboard that's not completely hanging. I dare you. Okay, this one's not technically hanging, but the other 3 rooks are totally hanging. But we have this funny rule in chess that you can't capture 2 rooks on the same move. Yeah, I know. I wish we didn't have that rule, but we do. Now, Tani plays the only good move, which is to get out of check by taking with the knight, and that provides protection to this rook, just in case the black rook takes with check. Tani's not going to lose 2 rooks for nothing. And in fact, that's pretty much all black can do here. Black cannot very well take this rook with his rook, because if he does, he'll lose this rook with check, and he'll lose that rook. So the grandmaster playing black takes with check, Tani takes, and the rook takes, but at the end of that completely crazy maelstrom, may have to look up that word, there are 2 minor pieces versus a rook, and 2 minor pieces are almost always better. The only thing Tani had to do here was avoid any trouble where this rook moves down to d1 and pins his knight to his king. For example, I would not go taking one of these pawns, because after rook to d1, now white has to be really, really careful that this rook doesn't gain dominance on the first rank. But Tani tidied up the game rather easily by playing queen check. When the king moves, he simply played knight f3, and eventually his knight came into g5, his bishop even got to this square. He triple attacked the f-pawn, and the black king was in serious danger, while white's king is relatively safe. Tani went on to win in about 15 more moves. Now, they played a rematch with colors reversed, and this game wasn't quite as exciting, but still worthy of our attention. In this position, Tani was black, and he used overworked piece again. But again, the grandmaster kind of realized that. But here, the bishop is the overworked piece. The bishop's trying to guard the knight and trying to guard the pawn. So Tani says, I know what to do. I will give away my bishop, because when you take back, then I have actually won a pawn. Now, in truth, white probably has compensation for the pawn here, because white has the bishop pair, and this pawn is going to be weak in a lot of variations, and this bishop is not exactly a very exciting piece. So the game is probably just about balanced, but watch how Tani won anyway. In this position, after f3 to defend this pawn, Tani plays knight h5, which activates the bishop a little bit, but also this knight is suddenly getting in the game. And if you try to guard this pawn with your king by moving your king to the second rank, then this rook will give check, which is actually pretty annoying. So the grandmaster played bishop g4, hoping that after takes king g2, it looks like the knight is trapped. The knight has put himself in jail. But Tani does a rescue operation with the move f5, and this pawn can move to the square f4 and safeguard this knight if needed. So white took, Tani took, white took back with the king to keep his pawn chain intact, but at the end of all of that, Tani is simply up a pawn in this position, and this king turned out to be quite weak. I'll just play a couple more moves rook c2, he's going to come behind the king, and after rook f1 to safeguard this pawn, the rook gave check, and this king is now squeezed, and Tani played rook to g6, which is a great move. It keeps the king squeezed onto the h file, and it protects probably the only pawn that could possibly be weak in black's camp. And after rook a6, h6 to give the king a little bit of air, f4, that's a little bit too aggressive, takes, and Tani plays the move rook to c8. And we're just going to end here because Tani's rook is invading, this king is terribly weak, and black went on to win in only a few short moves. So Tani dispatched a very strong 2600 Grandmaster twice using some tactics and some aggressive chess. I have a feeling that's not the only Grandmaster he's going to beat, so check back to YouTube soon and we'll see who he's able to take out next.